You've got a great idea for a small business, but you just can't get it off the ground. You want to be your own boss, set your own hours. Well, new year means new opportunities, and Shopify's got you covered to help get your venture off the ground. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business. You can get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. And they help with the details like shipping, taxes, and payments from one single dashboard. Don't kick yourself next holiday season when your 2025 resolution list looks the same as it does today. Make it happen with Shopify. Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/income.
This is Cindy Burnett. Welcome to my award-winning podcast, Thoughts from a Page, a member of the Evergreen Podcasts Network. On this show, I chat with authors whose books I have enjoyed about their new releases, and others in the book world about the books that they have loved. With so many books coming out weekly, it can be hard to decide what to read, so I find the best ones and share them with you. Do you love to be in the know about upcoming books? Kelly Hooker of Kelly Hook Reads Books, and I do too. We couldn't find a comprehensive list of titles all in one place, so we made one ourselves, and now we're sharing it with you. Our third literary lookbook is a list of a whopping 584 titles releasing from January to May 2025, curated for our communities. The link to buy it is in my show notes. Today, Fiona Davis returns to chat with me about The Stolen Queen. This one in particular really appealed to me because the Met is one of my all-time favorite museums, and this book is set there, as well as also being set in Egypt, a place that is on my bucket list and I am dying to visit. Fiona is the New York Times bestselling author of several novels, including The Spectacular, The Magnolia Place, and The Lions of Fifth Avenue, which was a Good Morning America book club pick. She's a graduate of the Columbia Journalism School and is based in New York City. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome, Fiona. How are you today?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me, Cindy. It's wonderful to be back.
I always love chatting with you. You're one of my favorite people to talk to.
Oh, I am honored because you talk to a lot of wonderful people.
I do get to talk to a lot of wonderful people, but you're right up there at the top. So let's talk about The Stolen Queen. I have to say, we talked about this before when we talked about your last book, and you said you were working on the Met and Egypt. And I thought, okay, two of my favorite things. So this was just a delight to read, and I can't wait to hear about writing it.
Yeah, it was so much fun to research, I have to say. And Anne Wright, I love this book. I really love it.
Good. Well, before we dive into my questions, would you give me a quick synopsis of The Stolen Queen?
Sure. So it's set at New York City's Met Museum in 1978. And that's when the iconic ex-Vogue editor Diana Vreeland ruled over the Met Gala. And also the King Tut exhibit was about to open. And so in my story, there's this 60-year-old, very enigmatic curator who works in the Egyptian wing. And she very unwillingly gets partnered up with Diana Vreeland's overeager 19-year-old assistant. And together they have to track down a stolen artifact. And so part of the novel is set in 1930s Egypt when the curator was just a young up-and-coming archaeologist. And then the story, it involves deadly curses, long-held secrets, and it's really about the importance of reclaiming women's contributions to history. And And I love that I call it's a mix of glamour and mummies.
So how did you come up with the ideas for this one? Where did you start? First the Met or first Egypt?
I thought about the Met first. I was really intimidated. It's an enormous building. Anyone who's been there knows there are rooms and rooms and rooms, and I was overwhelmed. But then as I was considering it, I found this story in the New York Times, and it was so interesting. It talked about that in 2018 at the Met Gala, Kim Kardashian, of all people, was wearing this gold shiny dress. And she posed next to this sarcophagus of a high-ranking priest in the Egyptian wing. And so they were both in the glittering gold. It was a really beautiful photo. It went viral. And the Met had bought that sarcophagus in 2017 for $4 million. Now, when the image went viral, the Jordanian smuggler who'd stolen the sarcophagus complained to an undercover confidant that he'd never gotten paid. And this eventually got, sent up to the Manhattan DA's office, where they have a group that's all about stolen artifacts. And they looked at all the paperwork and found the export license was forged. And so this beautiful sarcophagus had to be returned to Egypt. And I just love the way this mix of ancient art and pop culture collided and are really embodied in this one building. And that's where I thought, okay, a stolen artifact, that's my way in.
Well, and that is such a timely topic, not just for that particular artifact, but for artifacts all over the place in museums in the West.
Oh, absolutely. It's what all the museums are talking about. They have things like the Benin bronzes, which were stolen from Africa. There's a lot of talk, and there has been over years about returning them to where they should go back to, and that's in what's now Nigeria. And so, they were stolen during this violent and bloody occupation by the British soldiers, and they should be returned. But there's all these questions that pop up about that of, okay, what if the country can't keep these artifacts in a way that they should be in order to be protected in terms of humidity and, keeping them safe? And then what if the country sells these artifacts to, say, an oligarch who hides them away, and then they're lost from view from both researchers, from students, from the world, from the public? And so it's a really tricky question and a big one that all of the museums are wrestling with today.
And I know you traveled to Egypt to research this, and they've just opened a new museum in Cairo, haven't they, where they are displaying a variety of these items that they're trying to get back or have gotten back?
Yes, yeah. When I traveled there a couple years ago to do research for the book, and that museum wasn't opened yet, but it's incredible. It looks right up upon the pyramids. And yeah, I think they're trying to bring attention to this. And so in the book, I really wanted to have that be part of the story. And not that there's any easy answers, but just to put it out there. I felt like writing about a museum today without dealing with what happens to artifacts that have been looted or stolen would be a loss in a way in terms of the discussion around that subject.
I agree. And you actually preempted my question about the Met. It had to be so daunting to write about it. So what was that like for you?
It really was. And I cast a really wide net. I started by just interviewing people associated with the Met. I knew I wanted to focus on the Egyptian wing. And so there I interviewed curators and archaeologists and Egyptologists. I talked to people who are called handlers, who move the artwork, technicians, conservators who make sure it doesn't break and stays secure. And then I thought, the Met is almost like a little city in many ways. They have a cafeteria, they have security guards. So I interviewed security guards. I interviewed docents who work there as volunteers to help describe the artwork and connect the visitors with the artwork. And yeah, I talked to Met Gala staffers from the 1970s and from today. It was really, really fun, I have to say, and completely overwhelming.
Did you get to see behind the scenes areas at the museum?
Yeah, I got a really great behind the scenes tour down to what they call the staff caf. That's where the staff eat. And downstairs in the basement where there's all these signs that say, step aside if there's art in transit. And so if someone's trundling art on a dolly down that hallway, you plaster yourself against the wall. The art always comes first. And yeah, it's quite an institution. It just goes on and on and on. I didn't see nearly everything that I possibly could have.
I have been to that museum so many times, and every time I'm there, I still discover something I haven't seen before.
Yeah, that's what's fun. And that was fun about writing the book is I could pull in some of the spaces that maybe aren't as well known. So the Egyptian Wing, of course, is very famous. The Costume Institute is very famous. But then you have like the musical instruments room and arms and armor. And so just to kind of play around with those rooms and have a scene set there was fun to hopefully bring it to life. And they also have all of these storage areas underneath. I learned that they have 1.5 million objects in their collection. Only 6% is on view at any one time.
Isn't that crazy? I always find that mind-boggling. And there'll be a painting I want to see, and I have to Google it there. And inevitably, it's in their storage versus out being shown somewhere. And I'm like, oh.
Right. Oh, I know. But that was fun to have characters down in those storage rooms and to kind of flesh out what it's like, even if you've never been there.
Absolutely. I loved those parts. And traveling to Egypt, tell me about that. You and I had talked before because we had planned to go not long after you went, I'm pretty sure. But then October 7th happened and our trip was soon after that. And we were really worried it just wasn't the right time to go. So we didn't end up going yet.
Yeah. It's such a fragile region. And yeah, we went a couple years ago. So things were really great. I mean, Egypt as a country has a really tough economy. People are going hungry. But the tourists, of course, help, keep the economy going. And so, yeah, we did this wonderful tour where we flew into Cairo and you're picked up in a van. It was 4:30 in the morning because of the flights. And this van took us towards the hotel and we turned a corner and suddenly there were the pyramids. And they were pink because the sun was just rising over them. It was so astonishing. It just gave me the chills because they don't look like they're real. You've seen them in movies, you've seen them in photographs, and then there they are. They're gigantic. So that was the beginning. And we toured around. We went to a number of museums. We took a boat up the Nile for several days and got to see the Valley of the Kings. And that's where King Tut, of course, was discovered. And yeah, lots of temples. We sailed on a felucca, which is the kind of boat that they have on the Nile. It was pretty incredible. I loved every minute of it.
I think it's one of those things that, as you just mentioned, you can't even fathom how old they are and to actually see them in person.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, everything is so old. There are some things there that are 5,000 years old. And it's almost mind-boggling. And just how advanced the ancient Egyptian society was in terms of astronomy, medicine, women's rights. It was really a fantastic civilization in many, many ways. And in terms of going to Egypt, what I needed to do is to really get a sense of what the country, what's it like to look up at the sky and the sand is kind of covering it. So the sun is always this orange color. And then what does it smell like? What are the sounds? And to be able to take that and hopefully embody that in a book was my main goal.
And I think because the pyramids are there in Cairo, but they're sitting out in the sand, to try to really understand, okay, what does this look like? What do you feel like when you're out at the pyramids, but also when you're in Cairo? And as you just mentioned, you turn around and there they are.
Yeah. They're a little outside of Cairo, but it's a sprawling metropolis, and so you're driving for ages. And what's so interesting, this is the oddest thing about Cairo, is they put in all these superhighways, and to do that, they just cut through neighborhoods and basically cut buildings in half. And they've never taken them down. So you can see inside someone's room, where someone had pink walls or another person had blue walls. And all of these exposed buildings with their interiors are just still standing there.
Okay, that is wild and something I wouldn't have known. And I thought the pyramids could be seen easier from Cairo. See, shows why I need to visit at some point. Because I was wrong.
Yeah, no, they're a little bit set off, but boy, they're astounding.
So when we were getting ready to go and, trying to prepare ourselves, somehow my husband clicked on Facebook on some the aliens created the pyramids article, and with your algorithm, as soon as you do one of those. So he was just constantly getting all of these things about aliens and pyramids. And I was like, don't you dare send a single one of those to me because I don't want them showing up in my algorithm. So finally, he's gotten rid of them over time since we didn't end up going, but it was pretty funny.
It is funny because, the question is, how did they do it? And only recently they've discovered there was a river that they may have floated the stones down on in some way. that just came up on my algorithm a few months ago. And so they're thinking that may have been how they transported them as opposed to aliens carrying them.
Yeah, exactly. And lifting them up. Well, we ended up going to Peru instead, and the Incas are in a similar situation. These just massive, massive stones that they use to build all of these temples and cities, and they don't know how they transported them either. They have ideas, but they don't know for sure. So I do think there are a number of places in the world where those mysteries may never be solved, or maybe they will slowly figure it out.
Yeah, and I just love there's places with mystery still in the world.
I agree. As you were doing research, I'm sure you learned all sorts of fascinating things. Was it really difficult to decide what to include, what not to include? How did that work for you?
Yeah, it was tough. I knew I wanted my curator to be kind of obsessed with a mystery to do with ancient Egypt. And so I fell upon Hatshepsut, who was this very rare female pharaoh. And she ruled in the 18th dynasty. And her story was just so fascinating that I had to include it. And so, she was married to her half-brother, as one was back then. And when he died, she didn't have a male heir. And so the heir of his concubine became pharaoh, but the child was a baby. So Hatshepsut stepped in and served as regent for about 2 decades and did a great job of it. She really helped in terms of stimulating the economy, artistic achievements. It was peaceful. They traded with other countries. There was just enormous growth. And later, though, many of her images were hacked out of the stone and many of her statues were destroyed. And so all the historians said, well, she was a terrible woman who didn't allow the actual heir to rule. And that's why that happened. And to the point where in the catalog of the Met catalog in the 1950s described Hatshepsut as a vain, ambitious, and unscrupulous woman and a detested stepmother.
Oh,
right? I mean, it was like woman bad, very, very bad. And then later, and in the course of the novel, this Charlotte unravels what the true story was. And so I like to say Hatshepsut was revered, erased, reviled, and then restored. And I wanted that to be kind of a flow through the book as we learn more about her through Charlotte's research and through Charlotte going back to Egypt to find out kind of what happened. And so it was just really interesting. And I just found that story fascinating and I had to include it.
Well, absolutely. And I think that is such a timely topic. We keep learning about these women from all different places all around the world, but also different time periods who've been erased. And thankfully, people like you and these other authors are bringing them back to the forefront, which is very nice because it's ridiculous that these poor women have all had to endure having their names erased.
Yeah. And what was so interesting is I went to the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization in Cairo, which is one that was open, and her mummy is there. And so to walk into this room and the lights are lowered and you're supposed to speak in a whisper, and to walk around and see her mummy and think this is the actual woman who ruled the earth 3,500 years ago. It just gave me the chills. It was, you could see her hair, you could see her nails. This was the woman. And I think to hopefully to bring her story to life and bring that history to people's attention is such a wonderful job. I love what I do.
I agree with that. And I'm so thankful for all of you all that are doing this because it's wonderful to know about these women that actually made a difference and makes you feel like history wasn't just all men, even though it sometimes feels that way.
Yes, exactly.
So how did you decide on your time periods? We've talked a little bit about that, but how did you settle on the 2 time periods that you did?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do it in the 1930s because that's right before World War II. So the Met had a team doing archaeology and digging up treasures in Egypt at that time. And so I wanted my character Charlotte to be a young girl then. So she was 19 and helping to work out. And so in terms of the timing of having her I wanted her to be an older woman in the later part. So not older, but 60, which is not old. And so she's this associate curator. She's worked there. She's been in the same position for many, many years. She can't seem to move forward for a number of reasons. And so 78 worked out time-wise. And then because I love this idea of having the Met Gala an important part of the book and having an assistant an important partner to Charlotte, I thought 78 would be great because Deanna Vreeland ran the Met Gala. And she was such a character. It was so much fun to write her. She was this iconic ex-editor for Vogue. And after she was fired from her magazine job, she became a special consultant to the Met Gala. And it was just really an interesting Met Gala at that time, very different from what it is today. And so 78 seemed about right. I thought that would be the sweet spot.
And you mentioned earlier that the King Tut exhibit was getting ready to open.
Yeah, so there was a lot of pressure on everybody. There was a lot going on.
Well, what surprised you the most when you were writing this one?
Oh, what a good question. I think because you amass so much information, but I'm always looking for the surprises because I know that's what will surprise the reader. And I think for me, looking at the way the Met Gala changed over time was really interesting because it started, as I learned about it, it started in 1949 as a kind of dowdy fundraiser, a luncheon held in a hotel. But then Deanna Vreeland took over, and she was a fascinating woman because, she had this dark lacquered hair. She had very rouged cheeks. Then she even rouged her earlobes.
Oh,
and she wore bright makeup and she was always dressed to the nines. And she was just when she was very young, her mother said she was ugly and she was French. And so she decided to just emphasize her flaws and embrace, the individuality that she brought to the table. And so she became very, very successful. And when she took over the Met Gala, she really turned it from this kind of boring luncheon into the party of the year, which is what it's called today, by inviting guests like Mick Jagger, Jackie O, Diana Ross. And, Deanna Vreeland was famous for her quotes like, "Pink is the navy blue of India. The best thing about London is Paris. And my favorite unshined shoes are the end of civilization." And so with each gala, she chose someone to highlight and built a huge exhibit around it. And I think the biggest surprise that I learned in researching this book was that the tickets for the Met Gala in 1949 cost $50 each. Today, they're $75,000.
Are they really? I knew it was a very big deal and obviously see all the gear up for it every year and then what people wore, but I did not know they were $75,000.
Yeah, they raise around $26 million every year.
Wow. That's amazing.
And so for those, if you don't know the Met Gala today, it's this huge, people wear crazy outfits. It's a place to be really artistic when it comes to makeup and costume. And they walk the red carpet. And then they have a huge party at the Temple of Dender, which is this temple that's set up that looks out onto Central Park. And there's always great music and food. And it's the literal party of the year here.
That's crazy to think that it was just a luncheon when it started.
I know. Leave it to Deanna.
Exactly. Your cover is absolutely stunning. I always like your covers, but this is my favorite. Do you love it?
Yes. Yeah, I love it. It's, just to describe it, it's a night view of the Met, which is a really beautiful building. And then above it in the night sky, there's a constellation of a female pharaoh. And when I saw it, they showed me some covers with people on them, not this setup, but more of, more traditional. But the minute we saw this, we said, this has to be it. And there were a few minor tweaks in terms of the positioning of the pharaoh and that kind of thing. But I love it. And we just got the actual books, not just recently. And I love the way the title is all in gold, so it shimmers. It's perfect.
I can't wait to see mine in person. I saw you unboxing, I'm pretty sure, somewhere on social media. And I was like, oh, good. I hope that means mine is headed my way.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
I'm sure it is too. But it's just absolutely stunning. It is just beautiful.
Thank you.
And The Stolen Queen, was that always the title?
It was a tough title to come up with. And it was a real team effort to figure out what the best title would be, because you want it to embody the building and also the characters and also the story. And so there are a number of stolen queens here in the book. There's Charlotte, who should be curator, but is not for a number of reasons. She's sort of kept down. And then there's, of course, the sculpture that is stolen, is the head of a queen. And so, yeah. And then you have Hatshepsut, whose reputation was stolen in many ways. So it just worked on so many levels. We had to go with it.
I think that has to be the hardest thing, especially with a book like this that does encapsulate a lot of different things. How do we find the right title that will sound like it's correct for the book?
Yeah. Oh, every time I just dread it. Whenever I'm working on a project in my computer, it's called whatever the building name is, because I can't come up with the title until it's long over, and I have the help of my agent and my editor.
That makes sense. Well, before we wrap up, Fiona, what have you read recently that you really liked?
Ooh, I love that question. I loved By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, which is about Shakespeare, and is he really Shakespeare, or was there a woman who might have written or helped to write some of those plays? And it's a really detailed, deep dive. I love everything to do with Shakespeare. I think he makes it into pretty much every book I write. There's some reference to him. And the cover's gorgeous, and it's really, really good book. And the other one that I've loved this year, and which has gotten a lot of attention, and it's so well deserved, is The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern.
Oh, yes.
By Linda Cohen-Leugman. And I mean, she's a friend, but she is, I think, one of the finest writers out there. And for this book to get the attention it deserves is just made my heart warm. She's terrific. I can't wait to see what she does next.
I agree with all of that because she herself is such a delightful person. I was thrilled to see her book in People as the pick of the week, and then also to be nominated and then win the Mary Calvi CBS Book Award or Book Club Award. I just thought all that was fabulous. I've been so happy to see her get the recognition she deserves.
Yeah, and to get nominated for a Goodreads Best Book of the Year.
Oh, that's right. Yes, so many different things. So that is awesome for her.
Yeah.
Well, as always, it is just so wonderful to chat with you. Thanks for taking the time to come on my podcast, Fiona.
Oh, thank you for the wonderful questions. I will talk to you anytime, anywhere.
Happy to hear that.
Hello, and welcome to Novel Conversations, a podcast about the world's greatest stories. I'm your host, Frank Lavallo, and for each episode of Novel Conversations, I talk to two readers about one book. And together, we summarize the story for you. We introduce you to the characters, we tell you what happens to them, and we read from the book along the way. So if you love hearing a good story, you're in the right place. Our 9th season is coming this fall. Tune in to hear from some of the all-time great authors, Charles Dickens, Jules Verne, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and more. Subscribe to Novel Conversations wherever you listen to podcasts.
You know, a lot can happen in 7 minutes, and luckily, that's how long it takes me to tell a story. My name is Aaron Califato, and I'm the creator of 7-Minute Stories. I'm proud to partner with Evergreen Podcasts, and I'd like to invite you to join me on this journey. I'm going to take you on some crazy roller coaster rides using my unique extemporaneous storytelling style, and together, we're going to try to make sense of the world, all through the art of storytelling, and all in approximately 7 minutes.
Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I would love to connect with you on Instagram or Facebook, where you can find me at Thoughts from a Page. If you enjoy the show and have a moment to rate it or subscribe to it wherever you listen to your podcasts, I would really appreciate it. It makes a huge difference. And please tell all of your friends about Thoughts from a Page. Word of mouth does wonders to help the show grow. The book discussed in this episode can be purchased at my bookshop storefront, and the link is in the show notes. I hope you'll tune in next time.
Are you tired of seeing your teen or young adult struggle on a path that clearly isn't the right fit? Is your teenager confused about which direction to take after high school? The future of work is changing rapidly, and our kids need to know all of the options available after high school so they're empowered to make the choice that is best for them. In each episode, we explore the latest trends that are shaping the opportunities of today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Betsy Jewell, and this is the High School Hamster Wheel Podcast.
Hi, I'm Emma.
And I'm Joe.
And we're the Professional Book Nerds. 2 Mondays a month, we interview authors and talk about their upcoming books, what drives them, and their go-to order at the cafe.
On Thursdays, we share recommendations and dive into topics readers face, like how do I actually read the books on my to-be-read list?
You can find the Professional Book Nerds podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Want to learn more about us? Our website is professionalbooknerds.com, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at ProBookNerds.
We hope you'll come and listen, and as always,
Happy reading.